Hello, everybody. My name is Ulisa Medrano, and this is the first episode of the Svelte podcast. So, this being the first episode, I wanted to discuss kind of the growing trend I've been noticing in kind of the old Hollywood style in red carpets nowadays. And I first really noticed it this year with different red carpet looks and different celebrities kind of emulating that old Hollywood look. And it kind of got solidified in the Golden Globes when I saw various celebrities kind of following that style, whether it be with hair. I noticed a lot of celebrities had like their hair up in kind of those old Hollywood styles. But the ones I noticed the most were Zendaya, and she had this copper Louis Vuitton custom made dress, and she also had jewelry to go along with it, along with the old Hollywood hairstyle. And it's also good to note that it's kind of in reference to Joyce Bryan, which is also an old Hollywood star. And kind of I think Joyce's dress kind of just had the main silhouette. It didn't have the back skirt that Zendaya's dress does have. And it was also in a patterned fabric. I think it was floral. And there was Elle Fanning as well. She was in Balmain, and hers was a little bit different. It kind of had a shorter corset and kind of more of a ballroom gown type of silhouette. And there was also Selena Gomez in Prada, and she was wearing kind of a baby blue slimmer dress, and she also had kind of like a scarf or like a little coat that goes along with it. And she also had kind of that Hollywood bob. A lot of people know the short hair, along with jewelry. I noticed that I think it was a couple years ago where there was no necklaces, like no type of jewelry on any red carpet, and now everyone's wearing statement necklaces. So, also in the Oscars, there was Carey Mulligan. She was wearing Balenciaga. I think hers was kind of the most kind of inspired by old Hollywood, because you can kind of see replicas of that dress from that period, and she also had the gloves as well. And I think her dress was one of my favorites. I really like that old style. It reminds me of kind of a Barbie dress. And in the BAFTA Awards, there was also Taylor Russell, and she was in Loewe, and she was kind of wearing a white gown with like the halter neck and kind of the feathers at the hip area, and then it had a skirt down and it also had feathers. And I think the thing that really emulated it was the feathers from that time period. And some things, notable features on today's designs that I really noticed were the gloves, and it really focuses on accentuating the waist and kind of bringing that fabric in that area and tapering out to bring like that feminine touch to the dresses. And there was also lots of fabric being used, whether it be like layers underneath to give the skirts that poofy look, or kind of using the skirt, the main skirt of the dress, and there's another one in the back. This is from my first source, yellowbrick.com, and kind of the main factors or ideas in the old designs did focus on feminine silhouettes, accentuating the waistline, having the different necklines, especially the sweetheart neckline. And I think one of the biggest differences is that in modern designs, there's a lot more simple fabrics, like simple colors. I haven't really seen any patterned fabric. I think just Elle Fanning's, like the top part of it was like kind of a cheetah print, but that was kind of the main pattern I noticed in any of the newer dresses. And as well, there wasn't any pattern on the rest of the dresses, kind of like sequin or lace or any beading. Besides Taylor Russell's, hers had the feathers at the bottom and on the hips. And it kind of just shows that the modern fabrics, kind of their take is having more simpler designs, kind of just sticking to the silhouettes and keeping the fabric more simple. And as well, I think there is more of like the tame hair. Of course, Selena and Zendaya did have that bob, but the other celebrities, they kind of either had it back or it wasn't exactly like that old style of old Hollywood. But yeah, that's kind of what I noticed from this year's red carpet. And I think it really just shows that style of gown, it just shows how elegance can transcend trends, because it's been probably 80 years since that time period, almost, and you can trace it back to the 40s and 30s as well. So it could be almost 100 years. And that style is now being used again. It just shows kind of how the elegance transcends time, and the different celebrities that emulated that and kind of solidified it in pop culture, not only in the fashion world, but in red carpets, in any movies that it was used. And now maneuvering onto the social aspect of this growing trend, from the National World War II Museum, nationalworldwar2museum.org. The trend from kind of where these styles are inspired from, it went from kind of wartime to the new beginnings of the war ending and new peace era, and kind of what was going on is that males came back from the war. They were taking back jobs that were primarily being filled by women, and women were kind of being placed back at home, back to domestic housework. And a lot of these jobs were production jobs in factories, as well as volunteering jobs, either being medical or any clerical work as well. And it's also good to note that many women wanted to keep these jobs and kind of felt that they were just being pushed aside after the war. My other source, PBS, it's also good to note that since there was a lot less restrictions on what can be bought, there was a lot more purchasing power in households. And with that, more capitalism, more consumerism brought the idea of more designs into the fashion space and made it easier to buy new designs, as well as wanting to take inspiration from celebrities and emulating those styles. And with that, with people having more time at home, it kind of was seen that there was more time to do leisurely activities like watching movies. And this is where a lot of inspiration can be drawn from these movies. And transitioning into the fashion landscape of this all, through the source medium.com, there was a lot more fabric restrictions lifted after the war, and a lot of more fashion houses reopened. And that, coupled with the purchasing power, there was a lot more creativity to flow through. And you could definitely see kind of the urgency to buy these new items, or not these items we missed in the past. One notable is the Great Stocking Fiasco, where a lot of women, they were able to buy stockings again, and you could kind of see the department stores looking like it's Black Friday, and even a woman trying them on the street right after she bought them. And it just shows kind of how we miss these things in our life that didn't seem that significant, but once they were taken away, you could see kind of how important they were to us. With the fabric restrictions being lifted, you could really see kind of a new look on femininity, and the fact that these utility skirts that were clean cut, they were efficient, they were used for production lines or used for office spaces, how they were kind of really homogenous with everything. It really lacked the creativity that these fashion houses provided with their design. And that being turned into, the new fashion of bringing the waist in and letting the big skirts out, it really just shows kind of how creativity flowed with these restrictions being lifted. And with that, there was a lot more accessories being shown. There was a lot more hats. There was more gloves being worn. And from fashion history timeline, it was also really interesting to see kind of where fashion designs in a similar design of the utility wear, you could really see where these designs differed based on the country you were from. With European designs, they were closer to the active war place. There was a lot heavier restrictions. You could see the difference in how they were designed. And you could see with the difference with Philip Houlitar and Edward Molyneux. Edward was a London-based designer, and you could see that the dresses and the skirts that he designed were a lot thinner with the type of restrictions he had compared to the American designer that had a lot more flowing, and they were pleated so that he was able to use a lot more fabric with these designs. And you could really see kind of where different countries could diverge and kind of the difference in the lack of communication can create. It could create this division. It could create different clothing items. And it's also worthy to note that some women thought that these new feminine designs would set back the progress that was already established during this wartime in this professional space. And it really just shows kind of how designs can unite the world. It's communication through clothing, through something we wear every day. Even though we don't think about it, we are connected through the types of trends we wear, through the types of clothing we all share, we all like. And it's just communication throughout the world. And that brings us back to today. And I want to take us a little bit back to a couple years ago, 5 years ago. And you could really see the difference in red carpet designs. It was a lot more, it's a lot of different fabric, a lot of fancier fabric, a lot of different styles. It wasn't really silk or satin. And there was definitely a lot brighter colors, a lot of different silhouettes. And you could really look at this with Kim Kardashian's Met Gala dress, where she just wore head to toe black. You would never see that today. And you could definitely see how a lot of those designs seemed futuristic. It's something that you think about when you think about the future, kind of what those people would wear. And there was a lot more geometric silhouettes, a lot of geometric designs on the clothing compared to now, where it's usually just one color being used, not a lot of design work going on. It's just really based on the draping and the silhouette, and it's really clean cut. And these new designs, a lot softer designs, I really noticed that there was a lack of jewelry a couple years ago, and now there's an abundance of statement pieces. And it just really makes you think about how we view the current world, and kind of, coupled with the instability, I noticed that there was a comment on TikTok that really encapsulated this, that are we using these statement flashy things to prove that we are doing okay? It's a hectic world right now within the US and in the world in general, and it's something that you could really see us using fashion to prove that we're doing okay, that we're fine in this world. And you really think about how this brings back a better time in the US, the 50s with air quotes. You really think about how people think the 50s was the best time for the US. We're one of the biggest superpowers, and it just kind of you think about the nostalgia, do people want to be back at this better time? And I leave you with that. And something that I really thought about was kind of how we use clothing to make ourselves feel better, kind of to influence how others perceive us. And I think it's something that will continue to happen. And I'm interested to see kind of any future trends and the inspiration that current events will influence on fashion and vice versa. But yeah, that was the first episode of Svelte Podcast. I was your host, Elisa Medrano. I'll see you on the next one.